Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Julia. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, Julia, I'm excited for this conversation. I'm excited for what we're going to talk about. I think it'll be a fun conversation. Before we dive in, let's get to know you. Tell us a little bit about who you are and really what you love about content marketing.
Yeah, so I started as a journalist. I started as a music journalist, and then I got into tech journalism right after college. So for about 4 years, I was a tech journalist. And in that time, I was naturally gravitating into marketing as a freelancer, just on the side. The journalism industry is very small and a lot of hustling. So that side work was helpful, but I found myself enjoying the marketing side a little bit more because I was able to focus on the positives of the tech industry and find ways to market technology in ways that could be helpful for people, rather than focusing on reporting on what was already happening in technology. So I made the switch into tech marketing officially in 2021, and I've been there ever since. I work mainly with startups and emerging technologies like cryptocurrency, a bit of AI, and also helping existing companies find new ways to integrate these emerging technologies into their products or their marketing or how they would market using those products.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, today really ties into your background and your experience. What we're going to talk about is becoming an expert in your field and really making sure your content stands out on all platforms. So when I hear that, one of my first questions is, what does it really mean to be an expert? And how do I become one in a specific field? What are your thoughts there, Julia?
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of understanding your audience and also understanding the value that you bring as both an individual and a business. So if I was working with a startup, I would work with both the startup as a brand and the CEO as a figure who had a lot to contribute, had ideas of their own to contribute. And I would work with them on how to use content to become a resource for their audience to know that they can return to. So one example I can think of is if I was working with a cryptocurrency startup, I would work with the startup as to make content that's educational and informative, but also as a consumer, I want to know, what is the CEO doing? What does the CEO see in the industry that I'm not seeing as a consumer? And I think that brings a lot of value to content that cannot be replicated or easily, like you can't input something into ChatGPT and say, write a blog post. You need, without like that expertise, I guess. Having that expertise is really what makes you stand out, especially now when there's a lot of content being generated from ChatGPT, which is fine. But if you really want to stand out, supplying that added layer of insight is really helpful.
I love it. So let's say we spent the time and effort to become an expert in our field. We're really dedicated. We're learning. We're associating with the right people. We're diving into that experience. How do you convey that to your audience that you are an expert? Because nowadays it's so easy to go on social platforms or write on your website and really just kind of fake it a little bit and really just pretend that you know what you're talking about. How do you make it really stand out and convey that you're an actual expert compared to, honestly, the fakes?
Yeah, I think that just goes into having conviction. So if you have an idea or an opinion or just something that you have to say about a certain topic, having that conviction with what you're saying and being able to discuss it regularly in different ways is really helpful. Being able to not just get on social media and say one quick opinion, but being able to kind of go into detail about what you mean and where you got to these conclusions. I think it's different for everybody. And also, one thing that I learned actually working closely with a CEO of a major broadcasting corporation was when it comes to expert opinions, it's not necessarily as important that you are correct all the time, but having an understanding of what you're saying and believing in what you're saying can go a long way. And that does not, obviously, that doesn't extend into if you're a doctor and you're just making things up. But if you are like a business, if you have a lot of experience in business and you're making kind of predictions about what is to come in the future or how you think something can be done, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that is tried and tested. It can just be something that you believe in.
I like that. I like that a lot. Now, before we were talking and we started recording, we were talking a little bit about one of your passions. You talked about your background and how it focused on music. I love these tangible, like physical examples. How have you drawn inspiration from like the music industry, and how does that kind of help tailor your marketing and kind of how you approach content?
There's a few layers. There's the ways that musicians are able to build a kind of community around their work, and really get to know and understand their audiences very well and communicate with them through multiple mediums, so their music and then online and in concerts. Those are all different ways of communicating with people, and they all require different approaches, but having a strong understanding of your audience will help you be able to communicate across all platforms in ways that hits them specifically. So really understanding your audience, and then back to what I said about having conviction, knowing when to take risks and having the courage to do that is what is going to help you stand out from others. I recently read The Creative Act, which is a book by, I think, Rick Rubin, and he's a music producer and he's an industry executive. And one thing that he said in his book that really kind of stuck with me was creative ideas are going to come out, and if you have a creative idea and you don't bring it into the world, somebody else will. So if you have an idea, even if you think you're scared to bring it into the world, just try it, and it might not work, but it might work. And if you didn't try it, someone else was going to try it. So just be the first, I guess. So, yeah.
I like that. And there's definitely something to be said for, and I want your opinion on this, for being your authentic self and doing those things that stand out, that really highlight who you are, and how it tends to attract the same people. It tends to attract your audience. Now, I think some of these musicians have massive followings, but there are others that are more niche, right? And they're producing a kind of music that may not be quote unquote mainstream, but it's still like them, and it's true to their personality type and their experience and unique view on the life. And for some reason it draws in their kind of people. Like, how does that play out in business and other forms of content and marketing outside of like the entertainment world?
Just being able to have, again, that bravery and that conviction to like stand on what you believe in. Maybe that's in like a political cause, or if that's just in a business idea that you have, having that strong ability to identify, like, what do I believe in? What is my idea? And who is this for? And just continuing to reiterate that in different ways, different types of content, getting your voice out for what you believe in and what you're like standing up for. Like, again, whether that's your business concept or anything else, it will eventually attract the right people. The right people are going to see it. If you started a new TikTok channel and you made that TikTok channel something extremely specific, if you just keep making content, it will find the right people eventually. That's just kind of how the algorithm works. And that's also just how we work as people. We tend to gravitate towards what we're interested in. That's especially important in tech and in B2B also. It's your product. If you went into a room of just 100 people off the street, maybe 3 would understand what you're even making, and or maybe 10 would understand what you're even making, and maybe 3 would even need that product. But the more you keep talking about it, the more that's going to expand, and those 100 people will turn into 1,000 and so on. It's just being able to really have faith in what you're doing.
Very cool. So I love the theme of consistency that you just talked about, where it's not going to be a one-hit wonder, especially in B2B. Like, let's be honest, most of our content it's not viral worthy, and maybe it's viral within a certain sphere on LinkedIn or something like that, but the consistency plays a role. So how do you balance consistency with risk-taking? You talked about the risk-taking and how that's authentic. How do we measure risk-taking? Like, what are some like examples of like how I can think about how to take risk on a regular basis and be true to myself? If that question even makes any sense at all.
It is a balance. I'm thinking about not specifically in content marketing, but in kind of broader tech marketing and even business development decisions I've been part of in the past with different startups. It really goes back to understanding your audience and your consumer and what their needs are. So it might be a risk to add a new product offering. And so your marketing team has to figure out how to do that. But if you have taken the time to really understand what your audience needs and if they're going to respond well to this product offering, then you can confidently say that I'm going to take this risk. I'm going to offer this new product offering and hope that it attracts that same audience and kind of fills their need. Also, like I said, it kind of ties back to your product. Like, you may explain your product to 100 people and 10 will like only 10 will know even what that is and what it's for. But the right people will find it as long as you've taken the time to be thoughtful about it.
I like that. I like that a lot. So anyone hearing this episode that's thinking, okay, I need to be more of an expert in my field, what would be some advice that really just on a day-to-day basis, how to become just a little bit better at doing that and how to have their content stand out and really that share their viewpoint on a matter? How can someone today, this week actually start working on that?
Sometimes it's difficult to have confidence in yourself and what you're saying, but I would this is kind of advice that I've given myself is, what do I have to contribute? What do I have to say? And what I think might be common sense is not to a lot of people. Some people might find that very insightful. So start with the basics. I see a lot of people who become industry heads and major like vocal figures within their industry start saying very simple things, and then through that pipeline they expand on their ideas, and people want to hear what you have to say. Also, kind of, this is an extreme example, but thinking back to my like tech journalist career, I noticed this like pipeline with political influencers. They would start by saying a very kind of benign statement that was like more or less agreeable. And that was kind of the viral content. That was something that people in passing were going to like it, and they were going to repost it, and they were going to respond to it. And then they would, as they gained more followers and more attention, expand on those ideas and kind of go further down the pipeline of what they were saying. And you could use that for bad, or you could use that for good, and use that to really build yourself up as like a vocal figure within your industry. So start with the simple ideas that you have and share those and see how people respond, and then expand on your ideas.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, Julia, these episodes go by so quick. I have learned a ton. I love your perspective. if anyone wants to reach out and continue the conversation and really just connect with you, how and where can they find you?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, I actually deleted my Twitter last fall. I was spending a lot of time on it, and I realized that, oh, I'm not actually like expanding my worldview. I'm just in this echo chamber of people that are getting me worked up. So I may go back to it, but definitely LinkedIn. And then they could email me on Instagram. I think my username is _ that's so Julia. That's my personal Instagram, or my website is JuliaSachs.xyz.
Love it. Love it. We'll link to everything inside the show notes. Julia, again, thank you for the time today. Appreciate the advice.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ben. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.